Keegan, and welcome to Igniting the Space Down Under. So we're going to do our usual thing, Igniting the Space Down Under. So I'll just get the other guys to introduce themselves. We'll start out with Riley.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm just checking.
Riley, maybe we'll start with Brian. Brian, how about you? Just introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are. And for those of you who've been here before with Igniting the Space Down Under, you should be familiar with Brian and his work. But Brian, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Good day, everybody. My name is Brian Lim, entrepreneur in the space sector for 12 years, setting some stuff up. Run a little startup called Dandelions, basically dropping stuff out of space.
That's a good summary. Riley, let's hope you don't have any audio issues.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Then it's fine. Sorry, intro. So my name is Riley. I have recently, in like the last month, finished my aeronautical engineering degree and my physics degree. I've done lots of internships with Sabre Astronautics and Hypersonics Launch Systems, and now I'm working at Qantas.
Ah, excellent. And how's the job going at Qantas? Still getting your feet under the table? Still actually getting a little bit more experience? How's that going?
It's actually really good. I'm enjoying it because it's like complex problem solving. I mean, I would prefer it if I was making rosters for astronauts going to space, but I'll take it for now. But yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, well, Qantas is not flying to space yet, but we'll see whether or not that actually will happen. So, all right, guys, just to let everyone know, the chat is open. Yes, I have actually was just setting up a test and all that sort of stuff. So, if you're new here, please don't forget to introduce yourself. Oh, and for some reason I've cut that off. Who knows why? Oh, that's all right. I can't really fix it right now. But look, if you're new here, please introduce yourself. Remember to be kind to others at the same time, and make sure you respect each other. Just to let everyone know as well, you can also ask us questions, and you could possibly win something just by participating. I just want to remind everyone, first and foremost, that everyone here is part of this chat and part of the Igniting the Space Down Under loves the Australian space industry and loves all the space industry. So yeah, we're actually talking to you from a place of love more than anything else. So yes, I forgot to flash up the merch. There you go, the all-important merch. There you go, just in case you want to ask a question. If you manage to be on this live stream and you ask a question, there is a chance you could win some of that sweet merch. All right, so yeah, I think I've got to do a bit of an explanation about what happened with October. Yeah, there is no explanation for it at all. Life got busy, work got busy, everything got busy, and unfortunately, I ended up missing this, and I will try and spread the blame or the love, whichever way you want to do it. Yeah, Riley and Brian didn't help or remind me either. So I think we're all mutually busy with that one. So yeah, look, feel free to chime in, guys, anytime you want to, and just try and say that that you no, yeah, that's it. Play me enough rope, let me hang myself.
We're all guilty here. Look, if you're getting enough rope to hang yourself, trust me, I'm right there with you. Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest, I completely forgot as well. Like I didn't even remember. Like when I got your email, I was like, "Oh my god, it's November."
Yeah.
Where did that time go?
Yeah, it's the same. It's like this part of the year always goes fast for me, and Christmas just creeps up, comes from around the corner, and then the next thing it's like I got offended by someone saying on TikTok the other day that Christmas was only 180 days away, and that was in October somewhere, and I've just gone, wow, that's really close, not connecting the two at all, meaning that I probably should have done a live stream, but anyway, that's okay. So all right, so what I've done is I've switched up the format a little bit in regard to what we do. So we're going to head off first and talk a little bit about Australian news. So So first up, we've got Neumann Space is ready for launch. Supported by the Australian Space Agency's Moon to Mars initiative, nanosatellite Spirit is led by the University of Melbourne and is due to launch at the end of this month. Hang on, sorry, things have gone wrong. On Spirit will be Neumann Space's metal-based propulsion technology using only solar power. This propulsion system converts a metallic rod into plasma, which is then ejected at high speed to create thrust for the satellite. And then we've got next one is Fleet Space. Whoops, I think this is the right one. No, that's the wrong one. I missed Fleet Space altogether. Oh dear. Okay, so I haven't got the graphic for it at all. So you can just look at us lovely people anyway. All right, Fleet Space will join payloads from NASA and the European Space Agency, with Spider flying on Blue Ghost lander as part of Firefly's second launch mission. Um, is it second lunar launch mission in 2026? ELA has decided to, Equatorial Launch Australia has actually decided to, the owner and operator of the Arnhem Space Centre has appointed an ex-Apple executive to the role of Head of Business Development. Travis Marshall, pictured here, is a Royal Australian Air Force / Navigator officer and has been based in Singapore as a Senior Business Development Manager for Apple, of Education in Apple for the last 6 years. This newly created role will be pivotal in developing customised launch contracts, including launch, engine testing, payload, and mission management, along with mission planning and consultation for defence. With Southern Launch now, the Minister for Industry and Science drops by Southern Launch. Minister for Industry and Science Ed Husic, MP, and the head of the Australian Space Agency, Enrico Palomero, joined Southern Launch to learn more about the exciting opportunities ahead for Australia with the recent signing of the Technology Safeguards Agreement. And now we shall come to our main story, which is Australia and the US have actually have been working closely together to negotiate the Technology Safeguard Agreement, TSA, framework. In 2024, the TSA will allow US companies to carry out space launch activities in Australia. What the TSA does is protect US technology, including rockets and satellites, while unlocking major opportunities for joint commercial partnerships and investment. The agreement signing occurred as part of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit to the United States in October 2023. The TSA will help Australia's domestic launch sector and spaceports to grow. Australia is expecting US space launches on Australian soil to create new high-skilled tech jobs and supply chains. It does not restrict Australian companies from making homegrown launch and satellite technology competing satellite technology in a growing global market. So that's the big news. The big news is the TSA that went through. Out of everything that's happened in the industry of late, the thing that's happened, the big news is that the TSA has been signed. So, guys, thoughts about any of the particular news articles that went through rapidly there at the beginning?
I'm going to start with like a really random comment.
Yeah, go for it.
When I was doing my own research for this and reading about the Neumann Space thing, which I think is great, by the way, I love that the introductory line from Sydney Morning Herald was that it is the size and weight of a case of beer. I just love that that's how they described it.
All the important stuff, yes, absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah. I will actually argue it's probably lighter than a case of beer. Because, we spoke to Neumann, we've seen the stuff in person, right? That thing's lighter than a case of beer for sure.
Oh yeah, I read that line and I was like, that's iconic Australian at its best. It weighs as much as a case of beers.
Next thing, somebody's going to tell me that the rocket puts out as much heat as barbecue.
Yeah.
How many roast chickens can you get out of a rocket launch? I think it's instant charcoal. Just thinking about it.
New meaning fast food.
So the new one is that the TSA has come through, and the what that will mean for the Australian launches in this country means that it's going to really change the way space is conducted in this country, at least for a long, long time. Any thoughts, Brian, Riley, about any of this?
I think it's personally really great. I mean, obviously that's what we all think here, but I think for me, as interacting with so many young professionals, you find that they always want to expand their knowledge, and it's often been so hard because they look to the US being like, oh well, there's a program that I could go over there and learn something and then bring it back to our industry, and it hasn't been an opportunity available before. So hopefully with the new TSA, we can let our young professionals learn these amazing skills from overseas, bring them back and grow not only our own industry, but the global space industry itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there, Riley, 100%. Yeah. But however, the interesting part for me was, I'll just call this up again once more. Apologise to putting this over when you were talking there, Riley. The reason why Australia is somewhere to be a great place to launch from is just So that makes all the difference when you're trying to launch something
Yeah.
to low Earth orbit.
Let me add some context to that. So when you went over America, San Francisco is actually midnight right now, and New York is 3 in the morning. So you're looking at the low traffic overnight flights, actually. So if you are one of the viewers, you're looking at this, is like, remember, these planes are, the icons oversized just for viewership, but the traffic is this is the traffic that even at this level it's hard to launch from, right? Because when the rocket requires an enormous amount of clearance to make sure that you don't hit anything in the sky. um
that's the problem with all of this, is that yeah, it needs to make sure that it doesn't hit anything, because the corridor that or the NOTAM that gets issued is make sure that that's a notice to airman. Unfortunately, that's what the term was, and it's still stuck around. A lot of commercial flights need to avoid that area, and the reason why they need to avoid that area is the rocket can blow up at any point from the point that it actually ignites its engines all the way to orbit. And it's all about making sure that if it does blow up at any of that range, that the scatter of the debris hits a pre-designated area, and there's no flights actually going through that pre-designated area, especially if it goes to rapidly disassemble.
I love it. Let me add this, like a bit more macro thinking, right?
Yes, please go.
Historically, we all heard of something called the Silk Road. That's the road from like China all the way to the West, where goods and services were made, right? And that was time the biggest thing, because the easiest way to ship goods was by land.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then eventually, when we developed the technology to actually start sailing along the coast, that was born where the naval powers became more important, because floating stuff was easier, and you could move larger amounts of goods. And it opened up places like Africa, which wasn't really available to the West back in the day as a civilization piece. And China went into Southeast Asia to start selling spice, all the way to, say, India, right? And India acted as the exchange for pepper all the way into Europe. Now, then we had deep water navigation, and that was the age where we discovered the Americas. And with deep water navigation, you were able to now stay away from the coast and actually use the trade winds to actually move even more goods and over greater distances. Now, all this precipitated with different empires being born, right? So once we had the first generation of deep water navigation, the British Empire was born, and then we had the Industrial Revolution, where these things happened. Now, we had this incredible growth. Now, what's going on here is that prosperity is tied to your geography and what technology is available at the time. So without water navigation, everybody on the Silk Road was the prosperous link at the start. And that went quickly away once boats and deep water navigation came into the picture. Now, so when you turn around and go look, what's the next thing? When we are going to start building factories in space, when you're going to do lots of space tourism and transport, and go, Mom, I'm just going to Pluto for a 2-week holiday and back. That will come eventually.
Pluto?
What?
That might take a little bit longer. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call you out on that one. the inner nerd comes out. Oh my god!
All right. 2 weeks.
Say the moon. Say the moon.
There's a decade or two, okay? But here's the piece. So so much of our economic success is tied to our geography. So the question really you need to think about is, how does geography and the space industry give a country prosperity? So we say Australia is easy to launch stuff. It's also easy to get back stuff, right? And that's one of the really big things. So therefore, when we start building these factories, these colonies in space, all these facilities, how are we going to get them back to Earth? You will try to get it to America, and every plane has to get out of the way. So Australia is a great place for this. And therefore, it's going to probably be one of the premier locations for just simply the logistics of the back and forth. And that's actually economic prosperity. If you think about it, right? Singapore is strategically placed in the Straits of Malacca, at the end of the Straits of Malacca, where something like a third of the global trade passes its doors. So Australia suddenly has a chance to be that for the space industry. And that's actually a really interesting economic story.
Wow. Wow, that's one very succinct way of putting it, Brian. Thank you for that. I've kind of Riley, please say something while I think about it. Yeah.
I have nothing that will top that. But I think that whole analogy that you've just said to talk about the potential of our industry, that's actually really valuable, and I'm actually going to use that now as a good example when talking to
Yeah,
Brian 1, Riley 0.
Oh, no, we're all winning. Like,
No, I know.
I'm just doing the research of like, I did the research. I'm one of those folks, Riley, who went to the US, did space stuff in space, and chose to come back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you succeed in the US space industry, you're like, why do I want to come back? Kind of question back in the day, right? You know what I'm talking. Everyone knows what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But it was this specific argument that I just told you is why it made sense to do space in Australia and come back.
Yeah, I can see that. And like I said, I actually really like that story to describe our industry, and I'm definitely going to use it.
Yeah.
I'm taking it. I'm claiming it. It's mine.
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Everyone heard it here first. That Brian has actually given away all intellectual property rights in regards to that.
Fair use policy. I still retain the copyright of the story. I need to put it in my book. Okay, so fair use oath. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I like that. Just at the last minute, Brian goes, "Oh no, I better swoop back in and save myself and make sure it wasn't actually that bad."
Don't take away my ideas.
The argument also is from that I've seen as well, and I've read a few science fiction novels. I read way too much. One of the science fiction novels is it also works out really well for anything in the southern hemisphere more than anything else, and that also includes the African nations and the southern parts of America as well, as in the actual southern part of America. Anything that's not the contiguous contiguous United States of America. Once you actually get all the way down south in the southern America, like Brazil and all that sort of stuff, then it's also a good place to launch as well. But it's a little bit harder to do both one in Africa and two in Brazil, simply because there is not enough infrastructure there yet, and it would actually take a massive investment in those areas for the infrastructure to be built. By comparison, Australia, and also they're not exactly first world countries, and Australia is as a OECD member, so it makes a lot more sense that out of the entire market to go for, you're better off to go to a first world country rather than a potential second or third world country to try and do things. However, that said, that hasn't stopped the manufacturing base going to China, which has propped up China and made them more into a first world country, and it hasn't stopped the global manufacturing now looking to move towards India. So I'll just put that in there as well. So I don't think anyone can predict where it's going to happen, but yes, it's certainly starting to look very, 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 very lucrative for Australia at least.
I completely agree. I think that think of us, we're like babies, right? We're learning to walk. First few steps fall down, and eventually you figure how to walk it, and you run and you dash and you have your marathon, right? So we're in that stage of the space industry for us. It's really a good opportunity. Now, I think Australia will sell really a lot of business into Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific Rim. Africa, I think, will actually do quite well in the space industry, actually. From the perspective is that a lot of Europeans need to interact with North Africa specifically for their own survival as a country.
Yeah, good point.
So they're going to start fleshing that out. And one of the things about Africa that people don't really realize, well, actually, if you are in Africa, is that it's radio quiet because they don't have the infrastructure. So that means that's great for ground stations down the line. So don't diss it just yet, right? It has its opportunities. And the economic prosperity that will come will also make them a developed country.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. That's why I was making the point about China, and that's why I was making the point about India. It's just that, even though, because China was I guess, second world. I don't know if they were actually classified as a third world country, but yes, moving the economic or the manufacturing base to China has certainly pumped up their GDP to the point where that US is first and China is very much second in terms of GDP. So yes, it can be that the decision for it can be made quite easily and quite quickly by the European nations to go across and set up or establish operations there quite quickly and quite easily, because there's two main launch sectors, which is, as you rightly said, Brian, which is, yes, there is the US, and the US have done this deal with us, but also at the same time European nations also need to go somewhere as well, and if they're looking to move into commercial cargo or commercial crew programs and all that sort of stuff, which is a news item coming up in a minute. Maybe I shouldn't have given that away. Anyway, so if they're looking to go down the commercial path or the commercial route, then certainly, you're not going to be able to launch from the European Union anytime soon, just simply because of as we saw before on the graphic, the sheer volume of traffic that's going in and out of the European Union right now, and the UK for that matter. Slightly further north, maybe in Wales or towards Scotland, maybe, but you're still roughly pushing it to try and launch something from there. So absolutely agree with you. Riley, you've been really, really quiet during this entire thing. You must have some thoughts on this yourself, surely.
I do. Sorry, I have been quiet. I just realized my neighbors decided to throw a party right outside my window. And so I'm trying not to disrupt the very serious and good quality conversation with yelling.
Look, mate, you can always interrupt the serious and quality conversation that we're having.
Well, in saying that, I'll just say, who doesn't want to have rocket launches in Australia? So I can just be like, oh, Brian, I can't come into work. I'll have to work from home. I need to go watch the rocket launch.
Yeah.
I think another side to this, I mean, there's many great opportunities in terms of for industry and manufacturing and innovation, but also think about, tourism. People like me, even just everyday people that aren't necessarily in the space industry, they're going to want to go watch a rocket launch. I don't know who doesn't want to watch a rocket launch. And that in itself has many positives, especially for regional areas that often don't get that tourism traffic. So it helps our local economies grow as well. So I think there's a lot of great things that come from this.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. You're absolutely correct. And speaking of nerds wanting to go and watch some rocket launches. Hello. This is the main reason why I created this channel. No.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I created the channel. Look, I'd like to go and watch a rocket launch and bring it to everyone live. That would be a fantastic thing to do, and that's something I aim to do at some point. But yes, absolutely, the tourism. I did actually. Speaking of that, so thank you very much, Riley, for making that point. Is that what you have said is correct, because I only recently saw a report from New Zealand, which the benefits of the Rocket Lab has actually brought to New Zealand since they decided to launch from the peninsula down there, and the multiplier effect has been quite significant, and people just want to go and see the Mahia Peninsula, I think it is. I apologise to any Kiwis if I got that wrong. The economic benefits that it's had. They've got the launch control facilities in Christchurch, which is on the southern island. It's actually had a really good multiplier effect for New Zealand from space tourism, and at least space geeks, me being the massive one. I'm still trying to get over there and do something live. I'm working on it. I'll get there eventually. That's all I can say. So yes, excellent point, Riley. I now understand why you're sitting back and there's no party. You're just sitting back and quietly letting the two gas bags go on until you go, I make my point right about now.
Yeah, here's a new point that no one's discussed yet. No, I do promise there's a party next door, and I'm actually surprised that it's not coming through the microphone because I can hear it through my noise cancelling headphones.
Well, I can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I can't hear anything. So your microphone or the microphone in the headphones is actually doing a really, really good job. So well done, you. All right, shall we move along to the international headlines? ESA has to start a commercial cargo program. On the 6th of November, the European Space Agency announced that they will start a competition to develop commercial vehicles to transport cargo to and from the International Space Station by 2028, which is a step towards developing a crewed vehicle. It's suspected, let me just say that. While the ESA officials did not explicitly state it, the effort is clearly inspired by NASA's commercial off-the-shelf program, which offered funding to companies to support the development of cargo capabilities. In the same meeting, financial support was also still guaranteed for 27 Ariane 6 rockets and a set of 17 Vega C rockets. Each rocket is guaranteed funding up to 340 million euros a year just for each Ariane 6 and 21 million euros a year for the Vega C. Right, moving on to JAXA. JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries plan on building a reusable heavy lift vehicle. The Japan Space Exploration Agency, or JAXA, is working on plans for a new large and reusable launch vehicle. This new reusable vehicle will form the core of its future space transportation plans. The launcher will be designed jointly by JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. The move is sanctioned by Japan's Basic Plan on Space Policy, revised in June of this year, with the new reusable heavy lift vehicle to allow the new H3 to follow the new H3 rocket, which is pictured right here. So India has also tested and that has been successful and it's been complete. So in October, ISRO completed the key test.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Reached Mark 1.2 with the newly developed test vehicle, followed by the crew module separation and a safe recovery. A total of 10 parachutes with pyro systems was tested, and the parachute deployment initialized at 17 kilometers altitude. Venezuela now is to put an astronaut on the Chinese moon mission. The first Venezuelan man or woman could land on the moon on a Chinese spacecraft, announced by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro after a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in September. President Maduro also indicated that training for their astronaut could start soon, as China is intending to land its own Tokyo nauts on the moon before 2030, eventually establishing a base at the lunar South Pole by 2040. And now we come to the main story. So there's space debris investigation results. So a US satellite television company, the Dish Network, has been fined $150,000 for failing to properly dispose of one of its satellites. This is the first time the FCC regulators have issued such a penalty. The FCC's investigation into Dish centered on a satellite, EchoStar 7, launched in 2002 into a geostationary orbit of 36,000 kilometers. EchoStar 7 had an approved decommissioning plan for 2012, where the satellite would be moved to 300 kilometers beyond its operational geostationary orbit, essentially placing it into what is known as the graveyard orbit. The issue arose when Dish did not leave enough fuel on board to complete the final maneuver to the graveyard orbit with EchoStar 7. Dead in orbit, only 122 kilometers above its operational orbit, not the required 300 kilometers. Dead satellites always pose a risk to colliding with active satellites or other pieces of debris, further exacerbating the risk of in-space collisions. Up until now, the satellite industry has been self-regulating. Has been able to self-regulate its compliance with the FCC's debris mitigation recommendations. The FCC fine for Dish means that the industry is no longer self-regulating, and it may be issued a penalty for the incorrect disposal of dead satellites. So let's go back to the panel. This is new and interesting and means a lot. Brian, I'll start with you first, because you and I had an off-screen discussion about all of this, and you went into quite some detail on it.
All right. Yeah.
I did some calculations myself there, and I found out I've lost my calculations. Anyway,
You have 16,842 total objects at launch, 7,702 active are in orbit, and the FCC fine is 155,000. I'm reading your script.
Yep. I share out a run sheet before I start any of these things, so that way guys know what I'm talking about. So yes, thank you for that, Brian. Thank you for reading the things I was supposed to read.
Hey, I have to look smart somehow.
Well done, thank you. I appreciate you coming in with all the smarts. I do really appreciate
I mean, if I didn't get a run sheet, I'd probably be sitting here going, space, space, space is good.
Yeah, I'm the same. Sometimes I do this, and I'm like, people will watch this and go, "Yeah, he's not professional at all." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not really."
But I like that because it's like we're just having a conversation. I feel like it's nice to get away from the structured
Oh yeah.
talks at times.
All right, Brian.
All right. Okay. So when this article came out, I forwarded to Josh because this has to be talked about, and I don't think the space industry is any really talking about this. This is a massive, bloody, incredibly massive opportunity that has just occurred. The fine is a drop in a bucket for the whole thing, but it's the first time a fine has been issued in the entirety of the space industry for space debris, which means that now you can actually build a business case around space debris removal. So let's put an example. Let's say, you're launching a geosatellite, which they did, and you got $155,000 fine. Now, if you failed and now it's a space debris, you pay $155,000 fine, which will probably be money spent to then deorbit the craft or to take it to a safer position or whatever it has to happen. But now there's a price tag. You can build a business case. So if you build a facility, you can go, let's say whenever things like this happen, you must deorbit the craft or push it to graveyard orbit.
Yep.
You now can say, all right, can I build the mission for under 155K? No, right?
No,
Is it?
Of course not.
No, you can't, right? But you see, here's this is the beginning. It's a small fine because it's sort of like I have to do this to you kind of thing. When you think about it. You did it, you broke the rules, I have to, dude, put your fine on you. But going forward, when more and more people do it, the fine is going to get larger, especially when the consequences are going to get larger. So that means we have in your own sheet, you say that there are 16,000 objects, right?
So
7,000.
in grand total, at the moment there are 16. I'll read my own writing. 16,842. Now, just before we get into that, I was actually trying to get all the information from the United Nations. The United Nations actually keeps everything, a list of everything that's in space. I was trying to do my own funny spreadsheets and pivot tables and all that sort of stuff to actually give up some good graphics, but downloading that was not a good idea. So I've had to rely on the information of others. So of the 16,842, there are 7,702 active in orbit. Now the calculation was $155,000 US for those active satellites only that need to be pushed. I'm assuming there would be a line in the sand. It wouldn't apply to missions launched after a certain date. But then the potential for the 7,702 objects in orbit is a potential $1.193 billion for it. Let me repeat that: $1.193 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden retrieving these things from orbit is suddenly a cheaper exercise.
Yes.
At only a few $100 million.
Correct. And what you want to think of is the fine is going to go up over time.
Yes.
And the cost of space is going to go down. So if I were to draw a graph, and let's just say, let's say that the cost of sending stuff to space is dropping by every 3 years, right? In about 10, 20 years, it'll be so cheap to send stuff up, but then we'll send a lot of things up. But it also means that the fine has to go up to accommodate for the increased likelihood of collateral damage. That is the byproduct. So the fine goes from 155,000, it will go to $1 million. In fact, if you think about the airline industry, right, they say they cap it at $250,000 per person on the plane. So the plane, it doesn't kill the operator, but that alone tells you if that was the same thing. Let's say I have a space plane. I have Elon wants how many people on Starship? 100 people? 1,000 people.
Well, no, sorry. It's 1,000. Sorry. 1,000 cubic meters, 100 people.
Okay.
100 metric tons to low Earth orbit.
Okay, so let's say it's 100 people on a SpaceX Starship going somewhere, and an accident is going to occur. So there's 100 people, $250,000 fine, $250,000 fine per person in that regard. So that's $25 million right there, based on airline statistics, barring nothing else. How much will you pay if you were going to, if as a fine, if you were causing an increased risk to injuring or killing these people? And that's in one flight, right? So if you are launching, Elon wants to launch like 1,000 of these rockets to go through the window to Mars. So in orbit, you could easily have 1,000, 10,000 people in equivalence. And then suddenly that fine there is like at a dollar value damage, not 250 mil. It's probably like $25 billion in liabilities if you screw up.
Yeah.
So how much are you going to put as a fine to discourage people from screwing up? It actually is huge. And now there's a business, because you have that much asset in orbit, you got to clear the existing debris. So, Riley, you and I in space industry, help me clarify this.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna wait for a pause, and then I was gonna say again, great analogy with the airlines, because for example, with a lot more, like, I guess, pressure on airlines to reduce their carbon footprint, a lot of these airlines are really trying to be as sustainable as they can. And like, for example, Qantas this week just showed off their new A220, which is supposed to be and should be a more sustainable aircraft option. And in saying that, we can use the same analogy for the space debris. So by putting more pressure on these companies to think of making technology less risky or more sustainable in terms of not chalking up our atmosphere with the space debris, it's actually going to push our technology to be better. And so I was going to say, I think it's also a great little like push to be like, okay, great, we can send things to space, but how do we make it better? And how do we make it safer? So I think it's a very complex problem, but it has potential to have really good benefits overall if we want to, if people want to solve the problem.
And you're absolutely right, both of you, in that we've got Elon Musk, and just right now, I don't know if anybody's watching the live stream. Elon Musk is looking to launch Starship in the next few hours. I've calculated out to be around about 10 p.m. this evening. So once you finish with this live stream, go over there. Not beforehand. Just stick with us if you're here. But in the meantime, yeah. So he's looking to launch Starship, and if that makes orbit, or even if it just goes up, it does its half loop around the world and then splash lands in Hawaii, then he's proven the point. And then the escalation from this point onwards to get many Starships to orbit is going to get greater and greater and greater and greater. So the chances of hitting something when something that large goes out through the atmosphere into orbit becomes much, much higher, much, much greater. So if we just have a look again at the orbital debris that's out there, this is what it currently looks like. There is quite a lot of orbital debris out there. But the other thing is too is that it's not only Elon that's doing this, it's everybody who's doing this. Everybody has new space ambitions, and Australia has actually lined ourselves up to be able to launch even more from anybody else. It doesn't necessarily have to be Elon. It can be the European Space Agency, it could be JAXA, it could be the United States. We've always had that, but now more than ever, any startup from the United States who wants to come here and launch, it's now all available. So the statistics of hitting something get better or greater over time, just simply because of the amount of launches that are going to happen as time advances. So yes, it is well within our reach now to, with all the technologies, something like Neumann Space's plasma engine and all that sort of stuff, or metal plasma engine, that is able to maybe do something to bring satellites back. So we do need to have the better technology, and then there's the liability issue, because suddenly you've got 100 people that are going to orbit, or going to the International Space Station, or going to an international orbital space hotel, or to the moon, or to Mars, or to anything. there's all of that, and then I'm just getting to the point where it's just too many things to think about, and this is in the things we can detect, and then this is all the way out to geostationary orbit, which is 36,000 kilometers out, and then there's all sorts of stuff out there, including the dead dish satellite EchoStar 7. So we're going to need it. We're going to need it. We're going to need it. So my question to you guys would be, what do you think that the FCC did this on purpose to actually try and solidify a business case to make it so it's viable for companies to then be created to make this more of a viable option, to make a stronger business case? What are your thoughts? Riley, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Get in before Brian, quick.
You got. I'm actually get one, Riley. I want you to go first on this one.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm just playing around. I was actually thinking that myself. I was like, what is the reason that all of a sudden they're putting their foot down? And I hope that it was kind of to build a business case and be like, okay, this is something we actually need to start paying attention to. I know we've spoken about it, but now we need to do something about it. So for me, I hope that the purpose behind it was to build a business case and to get the ball rolling. And I think even if it wasn't, it was a great moment in time that has now caused good conversations. So for me, I don't really see if it matters whether it was on purpose or not. I think it's happened, and it's a good thing because it's starting these conversations like what we're having here. And hopefully people in power are having these conversations too.
Yes. Brian?
You know, I don't know if you guys remember. Do you remember there was a startup in the US that did not get approval for launch, but they lied and got stuff launched on an Indian rocket?
No.
Okay, I kind of.
So?
If you Google it, actually.
No, he went to jail. I reported on it a couple of live streams.
Yeah.
The guy went to jail over it.
Yeah, because it's like, if you think about it, I think that was the trigger actually. So you got a person who goes, no, we don't let you launch. It goes, screw you, I'll do it myself, and he does launch. Now you have people who are. He's the first example of a cowboy, like the crazy take risk, ask questions. The Silicon Valley, do it now, ask for forgiveness later category. Yeah, he didn't get the forgiveness, right?
Yep.
But you need to start. So he set the precedent that, holy shit, people are starting to break this law on purpose. Now that means generally all of our space players are really good behavior because we all know why the rules are there.
Yeah.
So when you have people who start breaking the rules, you got to go, look, we had the Cowboy once. I fine you now, a small fine, or it blows out of proportion. And I think that's what's really going on. I don't think it's about a business case or anything. I think it's more of a reaction to the fact that they are seeing cowboys appearing.
Yeah, I think you might be right. That's ringing true in my head. It's actually to prevent the cowboys because yes, and one of the cowboys that is more famous than the others is Elon, and literally in regard to Starship. You've now prompted a memory, which I read an article exactly about Starship, which was Elon being the cowboy of cowboys, and he's made this very successful business out of being a cowboy. Was after the first launch of Starship and it destroyed the pad underneath. What was happening is they went through and they did all the mitigations and whatever else, and it still had to go through an environmental review. The reason why it was taking so long was simply because for the approval to come through from the FAA, or the Federal Aircraft Administration or Aerospace Administration, is that they held him up and didn't give the approval because he's Elon Musk. He has money to boot, so their standard fine is only a few $100,000. He would pay that and just launch. So the only way they could stop him to actually think about what he wanted to do and make him actually do the things that the FAA was looking for was to stop him from not put through the approval, because if they just simply fined him, he would have paid the fine. And same with Dish, they'd simply pay the fine and move on with their lives. But yes, this actually by stopping Elon one of the biggest cowboys by not putting through the approval. Yes, so yes, you're absolutely right, Brian. So I was just bringing that to everyone's attention that who are watching that there is cowboys out there, and Elon is one of the biggest out of the lot.
Well, I would say that I'll give Uber credit on this one for weaponizing this.
Who?
Uber.
Ooh.
The rideshare.
Controversial.
No.
I want the story.
Yeah, me too.
Google your history. It's all on the internet.
I think I know it, but yes, go on.
So what happens when Uber first started service? It was technically illegal. You can't use a private vehicle for commercial use.
That's true. That's right.
So that means the drivers were getting fined. So what Uber did, and I know they happened this in Australia, is that they said, if you get the fine, we'll pay for it. You keep driving. And they designed the app. Yeah, look, this you can Google it. It's actually in the new.
I remember it now. Yeah, that's actually
right. And they had like some ridiculous level of funding put aside just to pay for fines. And what it basically meant is, now, it takes a while to change the law. So the law says you get fined, but you don't get demerit points. So if you could keep paying the fine, commercially speaking, you keep going. So Uber said, okay, we'll pay the fine. And you go to court, we'll take care of you. You're one of our drivers. And because of that, the government was like, holy shit, he just approved 15,000 vehicles to drive and not get in trouble. That kind of conversation. What do you do now as a government?
You have to make it legal. You have to make it legal because it just doesn't make sense. It's also similar to what happened with, I can't remember the name of them. The scooters, when they first dropped them into Australia.
Yep.
The electric scooters, they dropped them everywhere in every single state in Australia, in all the capital cities. The reason why they did that was because it worked well in the United States. And the United States had a bit more of a lax approval system, and they dropped them everywhere. They replicated the same thing here. And I noticed this, especially in Brisbane City, that all of a sudden these electric scooters were Lime scooters. That's them. Lime scooters. I knew they'd come up eventually. Lime scooters were suddenly everywhere. And they didn't care. They just continued to pay the fine. The Brisbane City Council paid the fine. However, fast forward to today, Lime scooters are nowhere to be found anymore because Brisbane City Council took its time and then released a new contract for electric scooters around Brisbane City, at least. And the Lime scooters is not there anymore. I have not seen a Lime scooter for such a long time. So yes, absolutely. And the other one that does the same thing, I'm thinking of an airline. I can't remember their name. It escapes me right now.
Australian?
Sorry?
Is it an Australian airline?
No, an Australian airline. It was in the UK.
Ryanair.
Ireland. They're known as Cowboys. I can't remember their name. But yeah, similar thing. They didn't have landing permits at all, and so they literally flew into airports, no landing permits, and they were fined every single time they landed. But because the revenue that they were getting from landing the aircraft into Heathrow and Liverpool and all those places, it didn't matter. They just kept paying the fines. I can't remember the name of the airline. Oh, it escapes me. I wish Jim was online so he could actually answer it in the chat, but he's not. So yes, it's known. There's cowboys in every industry, and now there's ones in space as well. Space cowboys. Oh god.
Yep.
I was waiting for that pun. I was like, if no one makes it, I'm gonna have to do it.
I think we should end the live stream there. I think that's the end of it. That's the end of my career as a public speaker. Oh god.
Well, let's switch to another piece of your news topic. You mentioned Venezuela is now sending stuff into space.
Yes.
So I'm going to add some. Like this is
not stuff, just people. They just chucking people up there.
So I want to put something up. Could you do me a favor?
Yes.
So actually, about 4 weeks ago, the U.S. government has reduced sanctions on Venezuelan oil. Are you aware of that?
Yep.
All right. Do you do me a favor? Can you pull up Google Maps and just zoom in on Venezuela?
Hang on. I can pull up hang on. Let me see about the flight paths. Hang on just a second. I can probably bring that up.
Yeah.
See, I was going to say it's really wholesome that we're getting a small industry involved. And now I feel like Brian's going to throw that out of the park.
I'm getting started, baby. This is perfect. Hit south, past Panama. South, past Panama. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. So keep just so now can you zoom in on the Venezuela a little bit closer? Yeah. Go up north. Go up north. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. Okay. Go right. Just go right. All right. And now I want you to zoom out 2 clicks back on your mouse. Okay. Sorry. Go back to your original position. Okay. Okay. That's French Guiana. So I want you to scroll out 2-3 steps. Yeah. Now, for the folks in the live stream, what I want you to notice is how close Venezuela is actually to French Guiana. So French Guiana was, taken by the French so they could launch the Ariane 5 rocket, correct?
Yep.
So Venezuela is in the same latitude. And it's going to have oil. It's going to export oil.
Hang on. Just let me see if I can get a better Google map. Just give me a second.
All right.
So keep going. You've got me
Yeah,
interested.
Keep going. While you're doing that, I'm just doing this in the background. Go for it.
Yeah, got it. So one of the things that the US, does is like when one big player starts being difficult on the world stage to find the smaller folks, and they make a deal with them, especially around oil, to try and stabilize the market. Venezuela just got their deal. Now, Venezuela, from its geographic position, is actually better placed than Florida for actually launching stuff into space from a geosynchronous Earth orbit launch, right? Because it's so close to the equator. You're now telling me that you have given permission to Venezuela to start doing all of this. There's a chance you're going to if you build a space industry in Venezuela, you put a giant rocket there. It is one of the most cost-effective locations to launch the geosynchronous Earth orbit.
Yeah.
Because of its equatorial. You don't need to ship gasoline or oil into the country. They have they have natural reserve outstrip Saudi Arabia. So if you need high-grade kerosene, Falcon 9, and Starship, you don't even have to go offshore for it. And because of its port access, you're going to build deep water ports for shipping oil and other things. It is actually then able to interface with much of the Western Atlantic, and then, on the Atlantics, to actually bring goods in and out of that region for the space industry. If you use flight radar, when you guys have a
now I have to change back.
No, don't change. Just, right?
Sorry.
But if you look at aircraft in the region, it is not a lot of traffic.
Yeah,
South America doesn't have a lot of traffic over that particular area. So it's actually pretty good to actually set up a launch site, if you think about, and return site. And so the US government then can go, hey, we got everything on the west side of the Atlantic could be in our control for launch and return. East Coast United States is the most densest part of the United States, so you can't really do much there. So how do you get goods and supplies to it? Now, you could get it from the West Coast or inland, but remember how we talked about, water being cheaper to do than land?
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Brian, but hang on, I'm just trying to change things over here so we can get a better view. There we go. Flight radar is back. Just let me get rid of the advertising on the side there. There we go. And this is the live view now of Venezuela as it stands at this time. Mm-hmm. So what time is it now in Venezuela? Do you know?
Well, it's so New York, it's 3 a.m. So it's about the same time. It's probably plus minus another 1-2 hours, the kind of, right? For the whole country. So it's probably around 4 or 5 o'clock. So
but doesn't it, hang on, my question to you, sorry, I'm going to ask the question here is, doesn't China actually launches from mainland China? They don't actually launch from any. Oh, sorry, penny dropped. It was a rather large penny. Sorry, guys. It was a rather large penny.
So we have to discuss with the location.
Yeah, okay. Now I can see it. Yeah, so what that means is at some point that China, yes, they're taking Venezuelan astronauts to go to their to space, and yes, they will be looking at actually doing it from somewhere else entirely, which means that they would actually be doing it from their own country at some point.
And Venezuela has oil. China needs 6 million barrels of oil a day.
Yep,
I think this is a very
it's a
interesting
fair
relationship.
deal. Couple of
Yeah.
astronauts to go up to the Tiangong space space station, plus
Mhm.
also joining them for the landing on the moon. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense because look at that.
Really
Look how
great
quiet
diplomacy,
that
right?
is.
Yeah.
That's a
Great.
live radar view. If anyone's tuning in live stream and they just want to know what's happening, yeah, that's the flight radar 24, and that's the view over Venezuela because we're talking about Venezuela joining the Chinese on the next, joining the Chinese and Taikionauts to go to the international space. Well, not the international, the Tiangong space station, and also to join them on the moon. Wow, amazing insight, Brian.
This just came out recently. I'm just doing some initial research. So this is a hypothesis I have. I'm working on the evidence still.
Gotcha. Understood. Riley, anything additional to add? Or you're just like me, you're just going, oh.
I was just like, in my notes, I was just like, oh, I think it's really cool. We have well, I mean, it still is really cool to get like the minority countries involved.
Oh, yeah.
Whether for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm going to stay out of that. But I still think it is really nice to see like other countries getting involved. And I mean, again, I'm playing the I'm really young card because I am, but I know like put me in the shoes of if I was from a country where, well, I mean, even when we were growing up, I didn't have a space industry until I started at uni. Like being able to see that, it gives me inspiration to want to study that. And then, so you're inspiring a new generation.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, and that's the end point, isn't it? Is despite the motivation and the end result and all those things that we could certainly talk about forever and ever and ever, it does actually inspire the next generation to actually reach for the stars. Really bad analogy, but anyway. So yeah, it really, yeah. Thanks, Brian. I've also helping you out with yours. So yes, it actually helps. Yeah, because the Australian space industry is the same. It's inspiring to know that one day we'll have our very own Aussie-nauts going to the International Space Station. There's a lady at the moment, her name escapes me, who's currently training to go to the International Space Station. And yes, the Australian has already been to orbit in suborbit through Blue Origin when they were doing their launches of their now grounded rocket and spaceship. So yeah, absolutely, Riley, I'm with you. It is inspiring, but yes, also at the same time, yeah, unfortunately, my cynical hat clips on just like Brian's, and I go, what are they really up to?
I'm not being cynical about it. I'm just seeing. I just see that there's a lot, the bigger picture and the opportunity,
no,
right?
No, I understand. I certainly understand that. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. You're right there, Riley. They started the barbecue and it started smoking. Yeah.
I just had a like fruit fly or something.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of those.
I think it's attracted to my sweet-smelling gin and tonic.
Oh.
That's
what's happening. All right, so I think we've talked about this enough. So, all right, so I just want to say thank you very much, Riley and Brian, for joining me. This has been an epic chat. Oh, hang on, we do have questions and answers. Look at this. Hang on, we do have our favourite person.
Yes.
Jim Cleland, he is back. Let's see. There we go. Hello there. Sorry I'm late to the party. It's 9 a.m. and he just woke up. Oh. And it's nice to see Brian back. There you go. There's the other comment as well. So welcome back, Jim. We were just making some comments about launching from Scotland as well, in terms of what's happening up there. So you might need to watch back the live stream because we're just about to end. So all right, thank you, Riley and Brian, again for joining me. Look, if you want any more information about Riley or Brian, please remember I've placed links in the description, and everything we've been talking about will be down there as well. So I just want to take a moment to actually say thanks very much for joining me, to you too for supporting me as always on YouTube, and just remember, as always, if you like this live stream, remember you know what to do. You've got to hit the like button, you've got to subscribe, you've got to do all those magical things, and remember, thanks very much for watching the Space Now.